Marathon has introduced one of the best implementations of a scav run in the extraction genre through the Rook shell. And I actually think Rook brings out some of the best aspects of the game that Bungie was aspiring for. For those who don't know, Rook is one of the hero shells that you can choose, but one major difference between it and the others is that you can play Rook solo in a lobby full of trios, and that's the only option you get. It puts you in a match in progress with a low tier preset loadout. The shell's ability lets you become undetectable to enemy UESC, and your ult slowly heals you over time. I'm going to go over some of the reasons why you'd run Rook, the progression, and why Rook actually fleshes out some of the best parts of Marathon. So, reason number one is obviously money runs, scav runs. That's kind of the main purpose of this shell. You want to make some money after a couple hard runs, or you don't have any contracts you want to do at the moment, Rook is your guy. You spawn in midway through the match, so most of the fights have already happened, so you're there to pretty much pick up whatever is left behind. And in this game, a lot of stuff gets left behind. You're less likely to run into full squad since it's halfway through, and your ability lets you basically de-aggro and hide and play that stealth role a little bit better. You can also use it to freely escape a guarded exfil with no worry, because they essentially act as your bodyguard whenever they're there if you're using your ability. Since you can just queue up again, you can sell everything in your inventory and all that money stacks up with zero risk and basically all the reward. Reason number two, you want to experience team wiping with the Rook, and it's totally possible because the threat of the world in Tau Ceti 4 is very real. Your resources are limited, low health, you just got into a fight with a bunch of UESC or just finished another fight with a different team. I think there's nothing worse for your team than a Rook with nothing to lose. Opposite that, the Rook has everything to gain, so you better believe he's going crazy. I've been on both ends of the spectrum, and it's definitely the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, which is one of the biggest hooks to these extraction shooter games. Even though I've had so many fun team wipes and encounters, I'd say one of the best feelings I've gotten so far is creeping up on a team as they're about to exfil and wiping all three of them right before they exfil as a Rook, and being able to loot all of the stuff that they just had. As mentioned previously, if you happen to get specific upgrades to your factions, you can get these capstone upgrades that basically empower Rook to a point where he's basically like a raid boss. Yeah, the guy is kitted out of his mind. Reason three, and this is the main reason I wanted to talk about Rook, I think there's just a lot more variety that Rook has to offer in comparison to trios or even solos, especially when it comes to proximity chat. Now, this game was never going to be like Arc Raiders. It was never going to be that social extraction shooter. That's its own thing with Arc. But Marathon doesn't need to fit that role. However, having the opportunity to have those social interactions with proximity chat is nice. And I think it brings back the tension that Arc Raiders is missing, especially with the aggression-based matchmaking. They've lost a lot of that tension with that because it's either one end of the spectrum where it's kindergarten lobbies and everyone is super friendly to each other, which is fine, or it's the opposite where you are getting hit by third party, fourth party, fifth party, sixth party, seventh party. So third parties are always expected, and it's going to happen in Marathon too, but it's not going to happen nearly as frequently because they don't have that fill mechanic. The only thing that does have the fill mechanic, however, is Rook. And that's why I think Rook has a lot of opportunity to be super social. People see a Rook and they're like, oh, you kind of have a couple options here. You can kill him, you can team up with him. If you team up with him, however, that's that tension. Is this guy going to betray me? And of course, as a Rook, you're feeling the same thing. Or you're thinking, when am I going to betray these guys? When is the time? So now that we've talked about the reasons for playing Rook, let's talk about what I meant when I said Rook opens up some aspects of Marathon that Bungie wanted to highlight. So one thing that previous extractions had before Arc was that feeling of stealth. Fights in extractions are not 100% honest. There are rats, and you have to listen to every single footstep. There's that tension, almost like a horror game, that gets the blood pumping. And the environments you're in do an incredible job at this. All the surrounding sounds the audio team put in, all the pipes creaking and The footsteps, every single little moment is tense. Only problem is, this game was originally for trios, and in trios, that tension gets cut in half or more. Think about it as if you were playing a horror game by yourself, in the dark, with the lights off. Now, imagine a friend right next to you. Even though it's still probably scary, it's not nearly as scary as it would be by itself. And that's kind of how extractions are. In trios, you also have your teammates yelling out comms, your teammates' footsteps, your footsteps, the pings, three other enemies instead of one. Those guys are running around, you're running around. Whereas solos, everyone's kind of crouching, right? And that's why I feel like Rook fills that gap for trios. And solos as well, of course, especially early on. But with Rook, the odds are against you even more so. You're playing against three other potentially fully kitted teams. With Rook, it's different. You hear every creak, every footstep, everything. And since you spawn midway through the game, you don't know where everyone spawned. If you play the game enough, you kind of know the locations where people spawn, and you can kind of fight all of the teams and pretty much be assured that the map is empty other than Rooks. So with Rook, when you're spawning in midway through, you don't know how many fights have already happened. You don't know who's died, who's still alive, who's camping, and that's another level of tension that's building. The environment sound design has you double checking and turning around so many times. You think you hear an enemy, but it's UESC. You thought you heard footsteps, but it's the trees or the branches moving or a pipe bursting. Especially underground. You go underground Dire Marsh or Perimeter, or, when we get Outpost, obviously, that's going to be even more tense. But all of those little sounds you miss out in trios because, you're making comms. And I think the team really spent a lot of time on the sound design of the world. In fact, in some of their developer Vidocs, they talk about how the world is one of the biggest characters that you'll get to know. And when you play Rook, I feel like you see that the most. You're able to see the hard work that they put in with the sound design all around you. Even the rain making the sound or the thunder, things like that. Every little thing adds up to bring that tension, to make it really actually feel like a world that's been lived in, that's hostile, which is something they wanted to do, and I think they actually did it. Another thing is the narrative. The team worked really hard on making you feel like you're constantly threatened, as this planet and its enemies are harsh, unpredictable, and honestly kind of terrifying. And playing Rook puts you directly into that world. And I think Rook was such a fantastic double down since the alpha for those wanting solo. I think solo and Rook specifically really sell you on the world that they're trying to portray.